maybe I can put it another way. I meant to ask this a little early, but you're already telling me. When this began, I won't say when you began this. When this began, this is an experience, and you set out to the world. You started. You had maps of meaning. I also know, without knowing you, that you had spent some considerable time doing actual thinking, which is something people don't do very much.
Yes, obsessively.
You thought, and you thought things through in a way that these generations have almost abandoned. But so you were prepared in that sense, and you went out, and there were certain things you saw wrong or discordant, either in the universities or in the general system, and you said, "I'd like to spread some reason here. I'd like to talk also about reality and life." Now, when that began, I would think everything was fairly sufficient. What did you learn, and I'll call it a mission, if I may. How did the mission change over time when you came in contact with the audience that you're now describing? And what is it that you have learned? You have done a lot of thought beforehand, you knew what you were at, but when you go out and encounter all of these individuals, what new came to you?
Well, I would say it isn't obvious to me that the mission itself changed. I think it's an extension of what I've been doing since 1985, and maybe even before that. It's just that the scale continued to grow.
Oh.
I mean, even with my YouTube channel, where I put my lectures in rather primitive technological form, because I was just using an iPad and a lapel mic.
Yeah, I remember.
I had 1 million views by April 2016, and that really made me think, because I worked with TVO, of course, and my lectures were popular with big ideas, which showcased a number of public intellectuals. And I think I had 5 lectures in the top 20 or something like that. So I knew that there was, and I was getting a certain amount of recognition in public for that. Not a lot, but enough, and then from a very wide variety of people, which was quite interesting. When I hit the 1 million mark on YouTube, I really thought about that, because I thought, well, I don't know what to do with that figure. I don't know how to conceptualize it in context, because 1 million is a lot of people. It's it's 20 football stadiums full of people.
Yeah.
It's an overwhelmingly best-selling book. It's far more people than you'd teach in your life. And I thought, well, what? And it wasn't cute cat videos, And this was back when YouTube was still a developing force, let's say,
that's right.
and something to be sort of ignored in some sense because of its humble beginnings.
And it was a very secondary place.
Yes, it was a very secondary place. Although that was starting to change, I thought, well, what the hell is this YouTube? What are we doing here? And then it struck me that, well, this was a Gutenberg revolution that we were experiencing, that the spoken word was now as permanent and as immediate, more immediate than the printed word, and just as permanent, and with a much larger audience, because more people, as far as I can tell, can listen than can read. And even with my book, a tremendous percentage of my books have been sold in audio form.
Wow.
So I really started to think about YouTube at that point, and I suppose that was one of the things that drove me in my foolish curiosity to make those political videos that I made in October, which was the first time I'd ever tried something like that. And that was, in some sense, I wouldn't call it a whim, but I woke up at 3 in the morning because I was so irritated about this bill and its attempt to force a certain type of language usage, and I could see what was behind that quite clearly. I thought, well, this really is annoying me to death, and often what I would do when something was annoying me to death was get up and write, but I thought, well, I'll make a YouTube video and see what happens. It's like, well, I certainly saw what happens. It's like,
yeah, you did.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, the thing is, you've got a hold of something.
Yeah.
Let's say it's YouTube, and you think you know what it is, and you don't have any idea what it is, and neither does anyone else, and that's certainly still the case. We have no idea what these multiple technologies are doing to us, but I can tell you that YouTube is an overwhelming force, and it's becoming more and more powerful day by day. I've especially seen that in countries, Slovenia was a good example, where no one really trusts the mainstream press. all the young people do, and not so young either. And pretty much everybody under 35, I would say, all they watch is YouTube, and that's the case all over the world. And so it's, I think on my YouTube channel, my videos have been watched 110 million times, and the total viewership is probably, like, because people keep cutting them up and distributing them, which is something else that can be done on YouTube, right? You can have a dialogue, right, where people edit and make their own commentaries, and the total for that would be at least 500 million.
Sure, God.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Dear God, it's...
Yeah, it's a new, well, it's not a new conversation, it's a new idea of conversation. I don't even know if that is the word for it.
Yeah, well, it certainly has that conversational aspect that television lacks. It's very comical to watch an organization like CBC try to adapt itself to YouTube, because they'll put on a 10-minute clip, and they break all the rules. They put 2 30-second commercials in front of it, which you can't skip. So
no one will watch it.
No one will watch it.
What
you do with YouTube is you put on a 10-second commercial and you let people skip it after 5 seconds. That's the rule. They break that rule. Then they don't allow comments. And so they'll put up something you might want to watch, for 10 minutes, and they'll get 20,000, 30,000 views, because they don't take the conventions of the they don't take it seriously. And it's like, you should take YouTube seriously, man.
Well, they also have no intuition for these particular forms, and